Today we're talking about 7.6, Solving Inequalities, Day 2. I want us to go ahead and look over these rules. First rule, before you do anything else, we had these rules last week. We talked a lot about them. What's the first thing you have to do?
Identify the variable.
Okay, so the variable is a letter, so you find the letter. Next, you can see you're going to move the number that's keeping the variable from being alone with an inverse operation. What does that word inverse mean?
Opposite.
Opposite, okay? So whatever the opposite is. So there's some inverse operations here. They're operations that undo each other. What is the opposite of addition?
Subtraction.
And what's the opposite of multiplication?
Division.
Very good. Last thing, read me number 3. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So we're going to use these rules today in our class. Go ahead and have a seat. Number 1 says to solve the inequality and graph the solution. Those are exactly like the same instructions that we had last week when we talked about the solving inequalities lesson, but this part that I have in the red is a little bit different than anything we talked about last week. So I want you guys to go ahead and read me what it says in the red. If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. So a couple things I want you to focus on right here. You have to be doing this to both of the sides, and we're talking about only if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, okay? So we're going to do a few examples, and we'll remember this thing that we wrote in the red throughout our lesson today. First up, identify the variable. What's my variable? X, okay? A letter, all right? Anything that's a letter. What is not allowing that X to be by itself?
6.
What about the 6?
6 multiplied by.
Okay, so each time you're either going to tell me whether it's add by a number, subtract by a number, multiply by a number, or divide by a number. So what's not allowing the X to be alone?
6 multiplied by.
Multiply by 6, okay? What's the opposite of multiply by 6?
Divide by 6.
Divide by 6. Now remember our third rule that we had, what you do to one side,
You must do.
you've got to be fair and do it to the other side, okay? So what happens to the 6x over 6?
It just costs.
It cancels out because 6 divided by 6 is 1, so I'm left with an x. What does this inequality symbol say? Greater than or?
Less than.
No, it doesn't say greater than or less than. Greater than or equal to. Remember, whenever you have this little line right here underneath it, you can think of it like an equal sign, all right? So that says greater than or equal to. All you're going to do with that is just drop that symbol down right there, okay? Just like we would drop down our equal sign, we're dropping down the inequality symbol. All right, now all we're going to do is we are taking this 84 divided by 6, which is what?
14.
14, okay? Now, let's come back up here and read what we have written in the red. Read it to me. If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. Was the last thing that I did on that problem multiply or divide by a negative number? No. If you look right here, I divided by a positive number. So I'm not going to do anything different. My answer is x is greater than or equal to 14. Now, the second part of our instructions asks us to graph the solution. You might remember from last week, how many points do I want on your graph?
3.
I just need 3 points, okay? You could make a number line that is super long, but all I require of you is just to do 3 points. Does anyone remember what number goes in the middle?
14.
The 14, okay? So whatever your answer was up here, you're just going to stick it right here into the middle. Now, what's 1 less than 14?
13.
What's 1 greater than 14? 15, okay? So you can read your number line 13, 14, 15 going that way, all right? First, you need to decide whether it's an open circle or a closed circle. Does anybody remember which one this would be? All right, JD says closed. Why is it closed? Okay, because you can see up here that you have the equal to sign. Anytime you have that equal to sign, it's always going to be a closed circle. Basically what that means is I could take this number and stick it up there. Would this be a true statement? 14 is greater than or equal to 14.
Yes.
Yes, why?
Because it says equal to.
Because 14 equals 14, all right? So anytime you've got that equals sign, you will always have a closed circle right there. Now I've got to figure out which one would make this truthful. Could I take a 13 and stick it up here and say 13 is greater than or equal to 14?
No.
No. So because you said no, we know we do not want to take our arrow that way. Instead, we're going to take it the other way. Let's see if this would be truthful. Can I take a 15 and stick it right there? Yes, okay. 15 is greater than or equal to 14. Now, what I want you to remember is these numbers technically are going on 16, 17, 18, and what you see here is this technically can just keep on going forever and ever and ever, okay? But I do not require of you to have that many points there. Instead, all you need to have is just those 3 points, okay? Remember the next thing that we talked about? There's a way to double check it. Do you guys remember that?
No.
Remember the arrow? Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like a greater than sign, and this looks like a greater than sign, all right? Because the arrows are both going the same direction, that's a way for you to be able to double check that it did work out. First things first, identify the variable for problem B. What is it? X. What is not allowing X to be by itself?
8.
What about the 8? Okay, divide by 8. Landon, what's the opposite of divide by 8? Multiply by 8. Isabel, what you do to one side? All right, so we've got to be fair to both of our sides. Jakari, what happens to this left side over here?
1x over 8 times 8 over 1.
This is going to cancel out, and I'm left with an X. Alex, what does my symbol say?
No, greater.
It says greater than, all right? So I'm going to bring that down. And then, Kyla, what's my answer over here on the right side?
Negative 208.
Negative 208. Everybody read to me what it says in the red at the top of our slide. If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. Katie, was the last thing that I did multiplied both sides by a negative number?
Both sides?
Yes. No, I only did one side. You can see this was a negative, but up here it says, as you can see, I've already highlighted it. You have to do both sides, multiply or divide by a negative number, because that's not truthful. This is my answer. X is greater than negative 208. Let's go ahead and graph it. Before we graph that, I do want you to notice, okay, although my answer has a negative in it, the rule does not say if you have an answer that's negative, flip your symbol. Only flip your symbol if you are multiplying both sides by a negative number. I need 3 points on my line. JD, what goes in the middle? Negative 208. Now, sometimes we struggle with negative numbers, but I don't want you to struggle. Think about it like money. What is less than? What would have you would have less money if you had less than negative $208? Negative 209. Okay? If you had $1 more than negative 208, what would you have? Negative 207. Okay, so reading from left to right, this is smaller and it's gradually getting larger. Okay, Isabel, help me out with this. Is this going to be an open circle or a closed circle?
Open.
Why is it an open circle?
Because it doesn't have an equal sign under it.
You are correct, because right here, this is not an equal sign. That's basically saying I cannot plug in this number right here and make that a true statement. So that's why it's an open circle, saying negative 208 is not one of the numbers that can be used on this graph. Now we've got to figure out what can go up here into our inequality. Could I put this? Think about it like dollars. Negative $209 is greater than negative $208. Is that truthful? No. So then let's try this other one. What about negative $207? Is that greater than negative $208? Yes, it is. So that's why we know we need to shade over that section and go that way. Okay? Once again, remember, if you look at your arrows, this looks like a greater than sign, and this also looks like a greater than sign. Because your arrows are going in the same direction, you know that you did it correctly. Problem C, negative 3x is less than 18. Identify the variable. X. What is not allowing the x to be by itself?
Negative 3.
What about negative 3?
Multiply by negative 3.
Multiply by negative 3, because remember, whenever you have a number right next to a variable, that always means that you're multiplying. How do I get rid of multiply by negative 3?
Divide by negative 3.
Divide by negative 3. What you do to one side, you've got to be fair and do it to the other side. Gabby, what happens over here? Negative 3x divided by negative 3. It cancels out, and I'm left with plain old. X is on the left side, is less than. Now, Carlos, what is 18 divided by negative 3? Negative 6. Very good. Okay, so remember, this is something we learned a while ago, but right here, I am dividing by one negative number. Anytime you divide or multiply by a negative, your answer will always be what kind of a number? It'll always be negative, okay? If you have two negatives, an even number, then it turns it into a positive, okay? So you're going to want to remember that. Although right now you can use calculators, when you come to like SAT tests and stuff like that, you've got to know how to do that in your head, okay? Now, I want you to read me what we wrote in the red at the very top of your notes. If the last thing you do is... Okay, I want everyone to retry. Look at your red notes up at the top. Read it together, everybody. If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. Did I multiply both sides by a negative number? Yes. Yes, you can see divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. Whenever I do that, what does it tell me I have to do? Flip the symbol, okay? So right here is my symbol. Instead of less than, guess what I'm going to put? Greater than. So directly underneath, I don't want you to erase it. I want you to rewrite it underneath it. And then just drop down your your negative 6 and your x. So your correct answer is x is greater than negative 6. Michael, tell me what to do.
So you make a line and put three lines. So
3 points.
Yeah, 3 points. The middle point would be negative 6.
Good job.
To the left will be negative 3.
I want.
Negative 3, but not negative 3, negative 5.
Okay, what is 1 less than negative 6?
Your left, not my left.
Just look up there. What goes to the left?
Oh. Negative 5. Negative 7.
Negative 7 is smaller than negative 6. And what's greater?
Negative 5.
Negative 5. Is that what yours looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I thought it was the other way.
That's all right. Open circle or closed?
Open circle, because there's no equal sign.
Open circle because there's no equal sign. Very good. And which number should I shade over?
You should shade over the 5. No, 7.
Which one?
7.
Okay, negative 7? All right. So you are telling me that...
No. No. I thought you meant something else. Negative 5.
You want me to shade over the negative? Let's just look at it real quick. Let's say that he had thought that was correct, okay, because we did have a little bit of confusion there. Check your arrows. Do you see how that one looks like a less than? Does this one look like that? No. So that's a clue to you that something went wrong, okay? So he changed his mind. Now he says he thinks this one would make sense, that you could stick a negative 5 up there is greater than negative 6. Would you guys agree with that? Okay, now think about it. If I was to continue going on and on and on in this direction, okay, eventually I'd get negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, moving on to like 200, okay? So then check this big number. Could I stick this in? Is 200 greater than negative 6? Yes, all right? So your number line could go on and on and on forever if you wanted it to, but you only have to have 3 points, okay? Now, here's what I want you to check. This right here, the symbol, you don't want it to be like your original problem, okay? Instead, you want your symbol to be the same as your final answer. Does that make sense? You want your arrow going in the same direction. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. What is not allowing the x to be by itself?
Negative 3.
Divide by negative 3. What's the opposite of divide by negative 3? Multiply by?
3. Negative 3.
Negative 3. Okay? Remember, you're multiplying by the same exact number. Who feels comfortable and wants to do this problem for me? All right, try it out. What happens to the left side?
I have to do the other side.
Just x.
Okay, that's going to cancel out to being an x. Then what?
12 times 3 is negative 36.
Good job. What else do I need to bring down?
Oh, the greater sign with the equal sign under it.
Greater than or equal to. Okay? Everybody help her out right now. I want you to read me what you wrote in the red at the top of your notes.
If
If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. So, Isabel, do I need to flip the symbol?
Yes.
Yes, I do, because the last thing I did was I multiplied both of them by -3. All right, so now you're flipping the symbol the opposite way and just dropping down your x and your -36. Go ahead and keep going.
And put -37 to the left. And put -45 to the right.
All right, very good job. Remember, with negatives, it always seems a little bit backwards. Very good, okay? Then what? Open or close circle?
Close.
Okay, why is it a closed circle?
Because it has an equal sign under it.
Because there is an equal sign. Basically, what it's telling you is that I could take -36 and stick it right there. Would this make sense, guys? -36 is less than or equal to -36.
Yes.
Yes, it does. Why?
Because
It's the same number.
it's
Because of the equal sign, okay? Very good job. Now, Isabel, which one of these numbers would help it to make sense, or I could stick it in there? Could I stick in a -37, or could I stick in a -35 to make that inequality truthful?
-37.
All right, she says -37. Now, how many of you would agree that -37 is less than or equal to -36? All right, very good job. Okay, so it's going this way. Once again, check that symbol at the end. This looks like a less than sign, and that is a less than sign. Okay, remember, once again, it does not matter what the original sign looked like. It matters what your answer is like. Great job. All right, this next part has to do with what we talked about during our flipped classroom lesson when you guys had that over 7.5. These are two-step equations, not one-step equations. So, do you guys see which number up here is attached to the variable?
Yes. -4.
-4, okay? So you look right here. This looks like -4x. Remember what we talked about with attaching the variable? Do I keep that -4 till the end, or do I keep it and get rid of it at the beginning? These two right here are like best friends. I want you to think about best friends. Do they want to leave each other?
No.
Yes.
No, they love each other so much they always want to stay together. So never move the number that's attached to the variable first. Also, if you remember from your notes, we said add and subtract first, then multiply and divide, okay? So what should I get rid of first? The -7 or the -4?
7.
The -7 because it's not attached to the variable, all right? How do I get rid of -7?
7.
+7 is the opposite. What you do to one side, you've got to do it to the other side, all right? Landon, help me out. What should I do? Very good. 7's cross each other out. What am I left with to the left of the inequality symbol? Okay, on the left side, I'm left with -4x. And then remember, just like your equal sign, all you want to do is you want to go ahead and take this inequality symbol and drop it down. So then we are going to write that it is less than or equal to what, Landon? Am I finished?
No.
No. Remember, the whole goal is to get the variable on the side all by itself. So if I was to be separating this, what is still not allowing the variable to be alone?
-4.
What about the -4? Multiply by -4. Asia, what's the opposite of multiply by -4? Divide by -4. What you do to one side, you've got to be fair and do it to the other side too. Okay? Emma, what happens to the -4x divided by -4? It cancels each other out. You drop down your symbol because on the left side you're only left with an x. And Carlos, what is 16 divided by -4? Okay, so remember, anytime that you only are dividing by one negative, your answer will always be negative. So what's the answer? -4 is correct. Okay? Everybody read me what you wrote in red at the top of your notes. If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. Alex, was the last thing I did to both sides multiply or divide by a negative number? Yes, you are correct. I divided by -4 here. I divided by -4 here. So, Alex, what do I have to do? I have to flip the symbol. What's the opposite of less than or equal to? Greater than or equal to, okay? If there's an equal sign there at the start, you're going to keep the equal sign. If there wasn't, you're going to not have another one, okay? All you're doing is flipping the symbol that's already there, okay? So now my answer is x is greater than or equal to -4. In the end, you will be able to see whatever you have here as your answer. You can try numbers, okay? If I'm thinking about something, a big number, I could say 100 in this spot, all right? Then I can just try plugging in 100 up here to see if it works out. And if you were to try it out, you would see that that is truthful, okay? Next thing I got to do is graph it. How many points should I graph? 3 of them. What is one smaller than -4? -5 is smaller. What's one bigger? -3. Jakari, is this an open circle or a closed circle? It's closed. Why is it closed? It has an equal sign. So basically what it's saying is I could take this -4 and stick it right there. -4 is greater than or equal to -4 because it equals it, okay? Which other number would be truthful? The -5 if I were to put it right there, or the -3? All right, you say -3. Let's just check this out. He thinks it should go this way. What would you rather have, -$3 or -4?
-3.
I'd rather have -3 because then I only owe somebody $3 instead of $4, okay? Then once again, you can check your symbols. This looks like that. This also looks the same as that. So you know that you did it correctly. All right, let's try one last example for today. 2b minus 13 is greater than 9. What do I get rid of first? The one that is attached to the variable or the one that stands alone? The one that stands alone. Remember how we talked about it? These guys right here are best friends. They want to stay together as long as possible. So how do I get rid of minus 13? Plus 13. Help me out, Kyla. What should I do next?
Once you do to one side, you have to do to the other.
You're right. I've got to be fair and do it to both. Keep going.
And 13 plus 9 equals 22. But first you got to carry down the 2b
Okay, I'm going to bring this down
and the side.
and bring down that, and these guys are going to cancel out. Okay? Who wants to keep going?
2 divided by 2.
All right, I want to get rid of that multiply by 2, so I'm going to divide by 2.
22 divided by 2 is 11, and 2 divided by 2 cancels out, and then you bring down your sign.
All right? One last time, everybody read me what you wrote in the red. If the last thing you do is multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the symbol. Was the last thing I did multiply or divide by a negative number? So you're going to keep it exactly the same and do nothing different, okay? I know you might feel like we said that a ton of times today, but that's the one main concept I want you to remember from today's lesson, is you only flip the symbol if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. All right? Okay, what number goes in the middle?
11.
Very good. And what were the other numbers?
On the left is
10, 11, and 12. Good job. Open or close symbol?
10. Open because it has
Open because it does not have an equal sign. And then which number would be truthful or make that statement true? The 12. He says that 12 is greater than 11. All right, let's just double check his symbols that he has here. This is a greater than sign. This is also a greater than sign. So very good job. You did it correct. All right, so tonight's homework is over. 7.6 is the lesson that we talked about today, and we talked about it last Thursday also. There's a 9 right here at the end. What does that mean? There's only 9 problems for you to do tonight. You do not have to do problem number 9.